Welcome to the fourth session of using Indian knowledge systems for creating a global well-being curriculum. In this session, we will discuss the current knowledge system and we will discover how to judge it by its very first way of knowing. Based on sense perception, what is the evidence that we can see of current knowledge system today? This evidence is called Pratyaksha Praman in Indian knowledge systems. In the last session, you were introduced to Harvard's Project Zero. How would you like to interpret the experience of zero in relation to bringing the 6 inner enemies to a state of zero? Will removing the 6 inner enemies enable an experience within you that generates a feeling of oneness with humanity? Could you write about a kind act that you did when you felt the pain of another person as your own pain? If you like, share your experience on social media. Let us see the genesis of the current knowledge system. When did ideas in the current knowledge system emerge? Well, we can speculate about it. The Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development's time frame is 150 years. What influences worked in 150 years is seen later. Some scholars like Ian Hill trace the beginnings to after World War I. The League of Nations was founded in Geneva, and later the first International School of Geneva was founded by concerned parents. The United Nations International School in 1947 shared its philosophy, as did the first of United World Colleges. How to develop an international curriculum to give a global dimension to students' thought. The International Baccalaureate or IB curriculum was developed in the 1960s. What did the first document say? It said, and I quote, "These programs encourage students across the world to become active, compassionate, and lifelong learners who understand that other people with their differences can also be right." Unquote. Ian Hill quotes from it, and I quote, "IB students may become critical and compassionate thinkers, lifelong learners, and informed participants in local and world affairs, conscious of the shared humanity that binds all people together while respecting the variety of cultures and attitudes that makes for the richness of life." Unquote. This has many similarities with UNESCO's description of secondary education. World War I did give a jolt to human thought and ideas. However, it was World War II and the nuclear bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki that created a new awareness. The fear arose in the minds: if a World War III follows, the next World War will be fought with sticks and stones. The world wars gave a jolt not only to economies, but increase in human suffering gave a jolt to human consciousness. Nations now wanted to think beyond myopic self-interest. A global vision and consciousness arose. Almost all now wanted future generations to realize the futility of wars. To meet this global goal, after World War II, a deep rethink on education curriculum occurred. The world did not want the world wars to repeat. It wanted to transform the way ideas are shaped in human minds. Education was its prime focus. Europe had seen the origin of wars and borne its brunt too. Curriculum was designed so that graduating students view Europe as one community. This idea was put in foundation stones of buildings of educational institutions. This became a global idea. The Constitution of UNESCO opens with the following words, and I quote, "Since wars begin in the minds of men, it is in the minds of men that defenses of peace must be constructed." Unquote. Education should conquer the war in the human mind. War and peace result from how humans apply their ideas. What is the basis of this hypothesis? Wars are not natural calamities. Therefore, we cannot blame an outside force for them. What could then be their cause? They must have emerged in the ideas that some humans had. These ideas sought fulfillment through war. We cannot say that if the damage caused by war was not known, it would not have happened. Using this logic, World War II should never have happened because people knew the damage caused by World War I. This brings us back to the question, what is the cause of wars? Ideas that humans have are the cause of wars. These ideas can be guided by education. Ideas are often in a flow. They are a continuation of the past. Ideas that impacted, shaped and reshaped education are no different. UNESCO may be tracing them to the world wars. They definitely had a very significant impact on the curriculum. But what ideas caused the world wars? What concepts impacted ideas earlier than world wars? This session will trace the history of ideas that predominated thought before the world wars. These must have guided search for the truth and comprehension of it. Application of such ideas could have led to the wars. A knowledge system, we discovered in the earlier sessions, first investigates the truth, then comprehends it, and finally applies it. Has education successfully changed these ideas after the world wars? We will first investigate the truth to find an answer to this question. How to comprehend a solution? We can learn from nature. To stop a poisonous plant from growing again, uprooting it is necessary. How to do it for education ideas? Until we trace the roots of the ideas, we will not know how to remove them. This session will address this issue. This session will apply this approach by investigating the truth about education ideas used to find out why such good ideas may not be working. Let us look at the International Baccalaureate or IB curriculum as one example of the current knowledge system. The last circle of the wheel shown here shows the impact of the wars on the curriculum design. The idea of international mindedness is the final goal of the program, that is a laudatory goal. At the core is the focus on service and creativity. These are perfect paths to achieve the goal. The fact that approaches to education and teaching and approaches to learning have been differentiated, that is, teaching and learning have been differentiated, is admirable. The focus on the individual and society being merged with the study of subjects like sciences, mathematics, arts is also perfect. The search of truth of subjects by each individual should lead to their comprehension in a manner that makes their individual talents blossom. Finally, application of these talents should be to serve society. This approach will integrate individuals with society. The critical importance of a theory of knowledge is recognized. Rightfully, it is clarified that it should be the basis of activity to be integrated with it. This activity should show creativity and be expressed through service to society. Fantastic. From such a focus on service to society, the teaching of subjects of mathematics, sciences, arts should be done. Literature should be chosen for teaching with the focus of prompting service to society based through thought patterns. The use of language should be directed towards this goal. Use of language in any other way should be difficult to visualize for education. So, where did the expectation fulfillment gap arise in the IB curriculum? The most unique feature of the curriculum is the theory of knowledge. This is so unique that, and I quote, it has no exact equivalent in the national education systems. It develops critical thinking skills. The curriculum is divided into three main parts: modes and knowing, ways of knowing, and areas of knowledge. One of the key aims of knowledge theory is to identify values underlying judgments and knowledge claims pertinent to local and global issues. Unquote. Ian Hill concludes, and I quote, "The world's moral order is in some disarray. Values education is lacking, inefficient, or unsustainable when people are confronted with hard choices under pressure." Unquote. Ian Hill's report is dated 2001. Evidence of 2008 recession shows a lack of application of values in society. The pressure to perform on Ivy League educated graduates led them to take unfortunate risks in 2008, impacting all. The 2008 recession led to a question: if our knowledge system is so good, why do problems exist in society? Why is a perfectly designed education curriculum not leading to the desired perfection in its human application? Can we blame the environment, society, and the system for this? Passing the buck or blame is not the approach of Indian knowledge systems. In its tradition, the knowledge system always took responsibility by saying the buck stops here. If wars took place, the concepts that led to them were taught for millennia so that humans could know what interpretation of ideas to avoid. Is a similar approach needed today? Why are the concepts used in the IB or the current knowledge system not preventing social and economic problems? The Indian knowledge system would question itself in this manner. Can we use its questioning technique? The Indian knowledge system approach was that either the concepts taught were not taught correctly, or were not understood correctly, or if understood correctly, were not applied correctly. With this approach, the concepts and methodologies were reviewed and revisited. Solutions from all sides were welcome if they can address the problem. Is there a case for such a revisit today? Will current knowledge system be open to concepts of Indian knowledge systems if it can offer evidence of a working solution? Indian knowledge systems, we will see later, is capable of offering a solution. Where can Indian knowledge systems give inputs to current knowledge system? The current knowledge system could not prevent current problems. Is it because it depended only on 8 ways of knowing? Is a 9th way of knowing needed? Is that 9th way about knowing the knower before knowing things outside the knower, using a totally different perspective? Is it about the viewpoint that the knower must have for knowing? Has it considered the implications if the viewpoint chosen to be taught, learnt and practiced is faulty? Will such a viewpoint not lead to repeated social and economic problems in society? The evidence that current knowledge systems has produced in terms of state of society may not have fulfilled the dreams. However, the IB curriculum has ideas that it has not explored enough. Exploring them further can help meeting these unrealized objectives. These ideas are: IB's theory of knowledge has factors that transcend individual ways of knowing and areas of knowledge. This has areas for further exploration. Is there a need for transcending the individual way of knowing using sense perception? Is there a need for transcending the area of knowledge that leads to maximizing personal gain without considering its cost to society? Let us take IB's nature of knowing factor. Has it asked, what should be known to prevent repeated crises in society? Let us take the problem caused by social inequality. When will this be explored? If this is beyond knowledge, has IB curriculum explored wisdom for nature of knowing, or wisdom's way to find the nature of the knower? The latter was Socrates' quest too. So why should we not pursue it using the Indian knowledge system? Does the current knowledge system's first way of knowing, that is sense perception, create a flaw in the common understanding of knowledge? What is this common understanding of knowledge? Cambridge Online Dictionary gives it as awareness, understanding or information that has been obtained by experience or study, and that is either in a person's mind or possessed by people generally, unquote. If we use sense perception as the first way of knowing, this definition of knowledge applies to the animal world also, for they too survive by an awareness of how to get food. Human awareness discovers the unique potential of humans above the animal kingdom. Animals too have an understanding of how to protect themselves. They too observe and learn behavior patterns from their adults. If experience and use of the mind is limited to by sense perception, then generally the information given by the senses may be severely limiting the capacity of the mind to explore ideas beyond them. This will curb the human ability to self-actualize and realize its potential. From knowledge to epistemology, the ideas of knowledge in the human context is linked to an education system, for even animals have knowledge of survival and self-protection. The Stanford Encyclopedia can help give its context better. It traces the two roots of the word epistemology and sees its Greek root words implying knowledge, understanding, reason, etc. It states, and I quote, "Although the term epistemology is no more than a couple of centuries old, the field of epistemology is at least as old as any in philosophy." Unquote. It also states that, and I quote, "In different parts of its extensive history, different facets of epistemology have attracted attention." Unquote. About current thought it states, and I quote, "Much recent work in formal epistemology is an attempt to understand how our degrees of confidence are rationally constrained by evidence." Unquote. So we see evidence is critical now. Ideas of epistemology change from knowing the knower to sense perception. We will study Stanford Encyclopedia here. Ideas of epistemology changed over time from Plato's search for true self as the rational soul to Russell's view of science through sense perception. Plato's epistemology, Stanford Encyclopedia says, attempted to understand what it was to know and how knowledge, unlike mere true opinion, is good for the knower. Plato and Indian knowledge systems explore knowledge about the knower. Plato calls the true self as rational soul. Stanford Encyclopedia summarizes others. It says, Locke attempted to understand the operations of human understanding. Kant, it says, explored the conditions of the possibility of human understanding. Russell, it says, attempted to, and I quote, understand how modern science could be justified by appeal to sensory experience, unquote. Russell includes sensory experience. After stating the above conclusions, Stanford Encyclopedia states that current thought is mostly, and I quote, an attempt to understand how our degrees of confidence are rationally constrained by our evidence, unquote. So we see the changing basis of education philosophy from search for a never-changing soul, rational soul according to the old ancient Western thought, to analysis of the ever-changing phenomena. So this change has been the basis of the change in education philosophy till now. If sense-based evidence is the best measure, can we use it to study the impact of current knowledge system on society? That the current knowledge system has led to a lot of prosperity, especially since the Industrial Revolution, cannot be denied. This has made human life very comfortable, and all have benefited from it. Advancements in science and technology have answered many questions, but it is also true that many questions remain unanswered. Knowledge is expanding at a phenomenal rate. The growth of knowledge has made many countries and people living in them prosperous, wealthy. One grouping of such countries is in the OECD, the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development. These are high-income countries with a high Human Development Index. In 2017, the OECD member countries collectively comprised 62.2% of global nominal GDP. 49.6 trillion US dollars. But when did the knowledge system many of them use come into question? It came into question after the 2008 economic crisis. What happened at that time? The financial world was on its knees and society was in deep pain. What did the wealthy economies, the members of OECD, conclude in 2008? For the first time, it analyzed three things together: creation of prosperity, spread of education, and growth in technology. It found a strange correlation between them from the Industrial Revolution to the Digital Revolution. It discovered that in the last 150 years, despite so much prosperity being created in society using technology and education, a lot of social pain was created. Could there be something that was amiss with the knowledge system? If not, why does it want to overtake ideas that use technology in a different manner? Few things are important here. Education has been recognized as having a central role in the way technology is used and prosperity created. That the root of the problem has been traced before world wars. If the curriculum during world wars is not the sole cause of social pain, can we go back to the sources of knowledge? Finally, we need to know, what does OECD expect education to create now? What is the solution OECD seeks? OECD's Directorate of Education and Skills has developed a learning compass. It wants education to develop character, transform attitudes, develop and use values. The goal is not prosperity, but well-being, and this has to be achieved by 2030. The OECD traces education's link to social pain over 150 years, much earlier than the world wars. Not just the OECD, the World Economic Forum too seeks some character qualities for competencies needed for the 21st century. Michael Porter of Harvard was asked by the USA president to find out what made the United States the most competitive nation in the world. He did a study of major economies and published his findings in a book, The Competitive Advantage of Nations. His research showed that economies' competitiveness advances from being factor-driven, that is, some have better natural resources or other resources than others. For example, some countries have mineral resources that can be exported at a lower cost, or some countries might have cheap labor, which gives them an advantage. His hypothesis states that cheap labor is not a permanent advantage, as the stages of development move higher where skills are needed. Hence, the country should not depend on cheap labor but use their minds for skill development. With economic surpluses emerging, the use of the mind becomes important. Porter finds that the nations, to keep their competitive advantage alive, must become investment-driven. Hence, more advanced factors of production have to be created. This implies that the human mind has to be used for not only skill development, but also for entrepreneurial ideas. These ideas further need the mind for making investment decisions. This is unlike the first stage, where not much use of the mind is involved in exploiting physical resources that are freely available as natural endowments. This implies that the human mind is used for the creation of more advanced factors of production. The movement is away from a physical aspect, the physical aspect of exploitation of cheap labor or cheap availability of natural resources. The national advantage now accrues due to the use of human mind and by developing skills of the body, not their cheap exploitation as labor only. The human motivation is the key in this stage. Higher levels of human motivation are seen here according to him. The next stage after the investment-driven stage is the innovation-driven stage. This is again using the power that the human mind is capable of exhibiting. Here, advanced and specialized factors are created and repeatedly upgraded. The handicap of not having natural resources of production, he finds, may actually lead to innovative solutions. A motivation to find creative solutions and satisfy sophisticated demands spurs innovation further. OECD found that in the investment-driven and innovation-driven stages of national competitive development, social pain was created. However, Porter finds that when economies tend to become wealth-driven, this becomes a decline stage. The indicator to identify a decline stage is lack of human motivation according to him. Is this the cause of mental health issues also? Therefore, progress and decline are both identified with human motivation according to him. Human motivation results from working of the mind. The initial stages of growth show an emphasis on the physical aspect, that is, the physical resources of nature and the human body as a physical tool. Later stages of growth and decline depend on human motivation, which emerges from the human mind. Is preventing a decline in not only competitiveness but also in values in society a need today? How to educate the mind is critical. How to transform its motivations? Does it depend on how humans perceive things? Will it require revisiting the existing goals of education and its curriculum components? Asking difficult questions about who will fulfill the new goal of education and how will it be fulfilled? Will we boldly accept the new challenges facing the philosophy of education? Increase in social pain despite spread of education creates a challenge. Will it require revisiting curriculum components? The four components of the curriculum are curriculum aims and objectives, goals and objectives, curriculum content or subject matter, curriculum experience, and curriculum evaluation. Should the goals and objectives of curriculum be vector, that is driven towards ethics, or scalar, that is value neutral? Should the curriculum experience lead to students experiencing that their true nature is to seek excellence filled with goodness, or is it mindless competitiveness that is the final experience of education? Can we evaluate education itself using this experience criteria? What values do students have after they are educated? What are resultant actions in society? Is society in a state of balance, etc., etc.? What knowledge system can fulfill the goal? How to build character, values, transform attitudes? Is ethics the challenge for education? 5 questions need to be answered for this. Who will build character? Who will be the role model or set an example? What builds it? Lectures or practices? Science explores the outer world for humans. What helps them explore their inner world? Where will these qualities be built? In the classroom, on the playfield, in homes, group assignments, or in the way curriculum is exposed to society? How will it be built? Methodology, technology, sensitivity to unique human capabilities, or how to set an example for the child to learn? And when will it be built? What are the stages? Which stage starts when? Is ethics education curriculum's new challenge, or was the challenge addressed long ago? Challenge facing 6 major education philosophies. Is OECD's conclusion of state of society after 1850s a reflection that current knowledge system is not working? We will see later the criticality of philosophy of a knowledge system. The 6 major philosophies of current knowledge system are essentialism, progressivism, perennialism, existentialism, social reconstructionism, and behaviorism. Behaviorism, the idea that all behaviors are acquired through conditioning. The question is, what conditioning led to 2008 recession? For essentialism, Plato's idealism held that all things have such an essence, an idea, or a form. The question is the form scalar or vector? Is our idea of human essence wrong? Do we use Kant's conception or Feuerbach's? We will discuss this later. Perennialism. It teaches ideas that have lasted through centuries. The question is our concept of ideas that have lasted centuries enabled a civilization to last? Are these ideas not holistic? Is there something we have missed out? If not, why are we changing ideas towards well-being from prosperity? Isn't truth of how society can achieve well-being everlasting? How to discover this truth and make all students discover it? To meet this challenge, we use the first lesson of Indian knowledge systems: speak the truth. Let's look at social reconstructionism. It views schools as tools to solve problems. The question is, have they succeeded? Let's look at existentialism. It focused on individuals and relationships between learners, learner-teacher relationships, etc. The question is the relationship of individual with society creating well-being? The OECD's conclusions show it has not done it. Now let's look at progressivism. Students learn through their own experience, it states. It teaches students to be good citizens as well as good learners, focusing on the whole child. The question is, OECD's conclusions doesn't show that it has worked very well. The challenge is how to create a wholesome experience of well-being. How can education goals become vectors that is driven towards ethics? This is the challenge facing education goals today. What brings a goal to life? In a soccer game, to score a goal, there has to be a movement towards it. Current knowledge systems' academic goals measure a movement towards the goal of comprehending academic concepts and giving marks. How to measure the movement towards a commitment to ethics in applying the concepts at work and in life? This challenge is not being met as there is no way found for their measurement. Indian knowledge system says remarks made by society about an individual, institution or knowledge system are more important than marks. The remarks made about the knowledge system after 2008 are more important than the academic marks that students received or the rankings given to academic institutions. These remarks occur because of the impact of actions. Project Zero at Harvard also sees the resulting actions as evidence of comprehension. The difference in approach of the two is that Indian knowledge systems is guided by the vector of personal ethics as the goal of education, while simultaneously seeking excellence in academic performance too. Measuring ethics in IKS is through awakening the inner conscience, making self-appraisal as a voluntary exercise. The issue between current and Indian knowledge system was pointed out in an earlier lecture. It is of the importance given to the subtle in the Indian knowledge system and to the gross aspect in the current knowledge system. Why does current academic thought feel that subtle things like character are not worth judging before giving students a pass or fail grade? Why does it feel that the subtle cannot be measured? Is education today concentrating on the gross aspect that sense perception can comprehend in an ordinary way? The gross aspect can be put in books and experienced by senses, measured as quantified profit in mathematics. Is the abstract mind being trained to see only the gross? Companies report quarterly profits. The stock price, performance of a CEO, and other metrics about the company depend on the quarterly profit. What if for the long-term gain of the company, short-term sacrifice is needed? If such a choice is made, the market punishes the CEO, the company, and the future of its employees. Is the quarterly profit giving a short-term focus that makes sense perception only see immediate gains as the way to progress? Does the subtle long-term impact of action on others, societies, customers, or even the business itself get ignored due to the myopic focus on gross numbers of profit, quarterly profit? Is this attitude of doing business reflected in the business of living life? Everyone is sure that this attitude caused the 2008 recession for businesses. Was its implementation in human interactions the cause of social pain too? Indian knowledge system believes that philosophy is that which is practiced. Just as Project Zero of Harvard states, this course is about practice of Indian knowledge systems concepts, not the learning of their theory or of philosophy. In fact, the philosophies it uses are based on practices of seeing reality. It seeks to learn from the Bhajagovindam lesson of Adi Shankaracharya that there is no use of learning by rote the lessons of grammar. They are not a sufficient condition for gaining wisdom. The practice of lessons of grammar can only get you an earning. Percept is the way to go ahead. The earlier session talked of 3 ways of listening, mulling over and applying. Hence, the Shravan or listening to the concepts of Indian knowledge system in these interactions is followed by a period of silence of 20 minutes, for mulling over or manan. This period of 20 minutes is more important than the class of 30-40 minutes. It is a time when the concepts get assimilated within you. The rest of the time till the next class is the time to practice or nididhyasan. Try to change your perception and thought according to the ideas of Indian knowledge system and attempt to practice them. In case the practice falls weak, rejuvenate it with the Shravan of the next session. Strengthen the resolve in the 20-minute manan. Make this 20-minute silent sitting a daily habit if you can. It will strengthen the roots of wisdom inside you, making your faith firm and unshakable. This will slowly improve your practice. This process is lifelong. The challenge facing the philosophies of education can be met if the ideas behind the philosophies are put into practice by removing the zero error in sense perception. The 6 inner enemies that cause the zero error were identified the last time. Can you recollect them and identify them before you make a snap judgment the next time? This is the way to meet the challenge in daily life. If all graduate students do this, the future will be different. We will find that the problem is not in philosophies or ideas that humans have to guide education. The problem lies deeper and elsewhere. It lies in practice in daily life. It lies in the fact that current knowledge system has shied away from identifying the inner enemies. Students who join the world's best colleges reach there due to academic scores, not due to practice of ethics. If the self-confidence their graduating degrees create is based on a false sense of ego of academic scores, it can be misused to create a crisis like the 2020 and 2008 economic recessions. Many laws were put in place later to prevent the 2008 crisis happening again. Society uses laws to check practices. Indian knowledge system believes that the idea of law should arise first from within each individual. The voice of conscience should be awakened by practices that bring all philosophies to life. The decline stage in progress of society and the decline of mental health within each individual is linked to the human mind and the motivation it creates. Voluntary acts that correct the zero error in sense perception reset the compass that takes individuals in society to the desired destination pointed out by philosophies of education or life. This course lays a deep emphasis on practice. Every attempt is made to make all the lectures very short. A 5-minute slot at the end of this lecture is being given for silent sitting. This is to enable the participant to mull over what is said. Whatever has been heard should be repeated in the mind so that it gets absorbed. Just as sugar is stirred in a cup of tea or coffee with a spoon, use the spoon of silence to stir the sugar of Indian knowledge systems in your mind. It takes some time for the tea or coffee to become sweet. Patience is very important. The perspectives shared in the course will seem meaningful only if such silent sitting is done to mull over what has been said. Else, the half an hour spent in delivering the lectures will be a waste of time. We welcome you to undertake an inner journey during these 5 minutes. Only then will knowledge that is outside you will become wisdom inside you. The time allocated for this is actually 20 minutes, not 5 minutes. The time should be increased gradually. This is also a time for the mind to take rest. In case it cannot do that, mull over whether the voice of the conscience has guided you at any time in life till now. We accept challenges for the physical body in games. In a gym, we can have a 20 minutes plank challenge. We may exchange challenges on the quantity of food we can eat. Can we go beyond such challenges to the second step of the Indian knowledge systems? Can we see if the mind itself can take rest and maybe stop working? Can we explore what will happen if it becomes zero? Remember, it is not good to challenge the mind. It rebels and makes you do the opposite of what you want it to do. It is far simpler to observe the mind. For doing this, first the physical body should move as little as possible. Observe the mind as it tells the body to move. You are not telling the body to move, the mind is telling the body to move. Observe the mind. Move away from the mind and see what it is forcing the body to do. Watch the mind as if you are sitting on a fan at a distance. When you are at home, Shavasana in yoga is a good posture for this practice. Try to first silence the body, then the mind. For those who have mastered this, they can try the next method. When you think of nothing, can you experience love without giving it a shape of a thing like your favorite food or a thing that you want to own or the physical form of a person? Can it just be love without an emotion to a person or a thing? Can it be love for the sake of love? How do you experience loving yourself? The purpose of this course is to help you discover yourself, that loving being beyond the body and the mind.